Welcome to this section, guys. The Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the Chinese President Xi Jinping are the three main actors in Tianjin at the SCO Summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the theme of the event, or the highlight of it, is a statement from the Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is calling for a shift in terms of the current international architecture, the political architecture, the economic architecture, to have a more just and equitable system. There's a call by the international community, particularly those countries from the global south, to have a just and egalitarian and an even system that is not dominated by the West and their allies that are using this enormous power they have to their own benefits. And we can see that clearly happening in how the West treats Russia and how they treat Israel. And these are two countries that have waged war against different adversaries for different reasons. And we can go into the details of the argument. But the Russian President Vladimir Putin is in attendance. And in 2 days' time as well, they will be having an annual parade in Beijing to commemorate the end of the Second World War after Japan was defeated during the war. So I'm going to give you some tidbits of what is going on. So welcome everybody. And today's global update, like I said, it's about the world order and the attempt to create an alternative to the current international architecture. So in China and at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin of Russia, and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi stood side by side to call for the UN for a UN-centered multipolar system. Well, they're saying the UN, but in this case, they are also advocating for an alternative system, either a reform of the current system or a complete overhaul of what we call today the international architecture, be it the political architecture or even the economic design, calling for a more just and multipolar world order based on equity and justice. Now, let's break this down so that you can understand what it means in terms of the balance of power in the world. On August 31st and September 1st, leaders of the SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, met in Tianjin. The Chinese President Xi Jinping unveiled the Global Governance Initiative, proposing a new SCO development bank. Talking about a new SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Development Bank, um, artificial intelligence cooperation, and financing for developing nations. The President Vladimir Putin called on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization a vehicle for genuine multilateralism and urged the creation of a Eurasian security framework, one outside NATO's control. So we already have a security system or a security architecture now called NATO, which is a transatlantic alliance headed and led largely by the United States and other European countries who have been using this to devastating effect. And we have seen the kind of wars that they've waged around the world. And because they have this enormous power and they have created these systems, they are using that to their advantage as against the interests of other countries around the world. So the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who attended this summit in person last year, he did not attend. Why? Because of the fight between India and China, what they had in Ladakh. But basically, at about 3 years ago, where they were having like this hand-to-hand combat and fighting in Ladakh. So the India and China are not organic allies or partners. But America's position in the world in terms of the sanctions and the tariff and the punitive measures is placing on all these countries, is driving them into the arms of China and forcing them to seek an alternative to what we currently have, which is the current international architecture. So they are seeking an alternative. They're saying enough is enough. We cannot longer continue to have you as a global policeman. We can no longer continue to have you as a global watchdog because this power you have, you're using it unjustly. Therefore, the likes of Russia, China, and India, and other countries around the world, particularly the global south, is calling for a more even system, a just system that calls for equality and justice. And this is what they are talking about. Recently, the US decided to impose tariff on India, like they did to other countries, and decided, well, let's look at what we can do to the Indians to humiliate them. And America decided to impose a 50% additional tariff on India because India is buying oil from Russia. And the Indians are saying, hang on a second, we are not the only one buying this oil. There are also other people around the world that are buying oil from Russia. China is buying oil from Russia. You are not punishing them. The European Union is buying far more oil from Russia than India, and you are not punishing them, but you are deciding to punish India. What have we done? Is this an attempt to humiliate us? And the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called this a stab in the back because India has done everything America asked it to do. The Indians have gone leaps and bounds to make sure that they are in the good books of the United States. And what did America do? Stab India in the back. So the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, this is a humiliation. We are not going to accept this. And the funny aspect of it is that while that summit was going on, the US President and the White House put out a statement that India have reached out to the White House, have reached out to America, calling for zero tariff across board, meaning that India is now ready to do a deal. How could this have happened? For years now, America has been, particularly for months rather, since ever since Donald Trump came to power, he's been using this, wielding this stick against countries, some of them that are so-called allies of America, tormenting them, bullying them. And now India is trying to find an alternative, and the US president is giving a statement that India is calling for rapprochement. How could the Prime Minister of India have done this? This is the White House again trying to save face in the face of this, you know, uh, crumbling American power and position and hegemony in the world, and saying, oh, look, the Indians are reaching out to us, and the Indians are saying, come, let's make a deal. We need to make an agreement. How could this have happened when the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, is still in China? I don't think he'll be attending the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, but he's in Tianjin with other world leaders, basically, embracing with them and having this bromance with them shoulder to shoulder, spitting on the face of the United States. And the US is saying, oh, well, we want to do a deal with the Indians. This is what America has been doing over the years. And I don't see how it really benefits the United States to be antagonizing and using this stick, in terms of sanctions and punitive measures against both adversaries and allies. They're doing it to the Europeans. Well deserved. The Europeans have always backed America in some of their heinous wars and atrocities that they've been committing around the world. So when America does it to them, I'm okay with that. But again, the mistake America is doing is that, they should not think for a second that this idea of showing tough love, if you like, look at what Trump have achieved in doing. He's basically help India and China normalize ties. From his attempt to isolate China, now he's driving all these countries into the arms of China. And it's not just Trump, Biden before him. Russia and China are not allies. They fought a lot of wars on the eastern part of Russia because China wants to also seize land from Russia. And these guys have basically fought each other. And all of a sudden, America is waking up and say, how do we drive these people closer to each other? Let's do that by sanctioning them, even the ones we like, even the ones that are our allies. Why don't we sanction them? Let's sanction them enough so that we can drive them to a position of acquiescence, of humiliation, so that we can control them. And when you have enormous power like these countries have, this is how they think of power. This is how they intend to use power. This is how they want to bully their way through in order to be the hegemon. And the story between America and China goes back a long time, from the recognition of Taiwan to the expulsion for the non-recognition of Chinese mainland, and later when they eventually recognized China, continued to work with Taiwan and claiming they have one China policy, but leaving it ambiguous to the extent of still undermining the power in Beijing and supplying arms to the government in Taipei. And I take you guys back to 1993, called, what I've talked about numerous times, called the Yinhe incident. So the Yinhe incident, thank you. So the Yinhe incident happened in 1993 when the Chinese vessel Yinhe, was carrying supplies to the Middle East, and during the government, and this was during the government of uh, Bill Clinton in 1993. So the American Navy decided to hijack or stop the vessel on the Indian Ocean, left it stranded there for 23 days, denied it access to docking on any of the ports in the Middle East by bullying the countries there and telling them not to allow Yinhe, the Chinese vessel, to dock. and switching off the GPS signal which was using for navigation, because the global positioning system or GPS was, it's controlled by the American military. So they switched it off and left it stranded for 23 days on the Indian Oceans, and the Indian Ocean. And eventually, when they boarded the plane, meaning boarded the vessel, meaning American Navy boarded the vessel, took the vessel, hijacked it, and took it to the port of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and did inspection on that vessel. And they found no chemical weapon whatsoever on it, because this was the allegation that China was carrying chemical weapon bound for Iran. So when they inspected it and they didn't find anything, what happened? No apology, no restitution. And they even went further to say, well, the Chinese have never been honest in their life, that if they were honest enough ever in their life, that they wouldn't have to go through this humiliation. So this has always been the pattern of the West: bullying, intimidation, and all these tactics they've been using across the board against countries in the global south. And again, it's not different in Africa. This is what they do. They try to keep the population under control through the media and bully the government to position of acquiescence, threaten the government with all sorts of sanctions. And if the government refuses to fall in line and to acquiesce, you know what they do to them. So this is about, it's time for us to wake up, guys. This is what the West have been doing, and we need to wake up. Thank you. Now, like I said, the SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is holding a summit, the annual summit in Tianjin in China. And these countries of the global south are uniting and saying enough is enough. So these countries that are members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are looking to foster ties in economic, politically, and also, security wise, particularly in Central Asia and the whole of the Eurasia. So it's a Eurasian sort of bloc. So now, why does this matter? Why is this important? This wasn't just about photo ops. The SCO, together with BRICS, ASEAN, and OPEC, is shaping an alternative global order, looking for an alternative system that is not controlled from Washington, D.C., who continue to use its power to manipulate, power to intimidate, to bully, and any sort of coherence on the international stage. And this is why I have a problem with these so-called international institutions, the ones we have today, largely controlled by the West. They are used as methods or measures of control. For instance, the International Criminal Court, if you look at the long list of the prosecutions in the International Criminal Court, African leaders, African leaders, 98% of the people prosecuted are African leaders from Congo, from Cameroon, from Central African Republic, from Sudan, from South Africa. So the list is endless. The Europeans are not there. Who waged the war on Iraq and on Afghanistan? It's not any African country. Who are the warlords that waged this war on Afghanistan mercilessly? You'd not find one African leader there. What happened to the European and African leaders that have been waging war and creating all these problems around the world? Israel is bombing Gaza, Lebanon, Syria every single day. And you guys don't have a problem with it. But the ICC is targeting Omar al-Bashir, they're targeting Laurent Nkunda, they're targeting Boston Tanganda, and all the rebel leaders from Africa, in quote, and even all the political leaders in Africa, they're targeting them. But clearly, the West is not committing any crime, only Africans, because the Africans are the easiest pick, the Africans are the easiest ones to target. So this is why this is important to have an alternative structure and an alternative system that is more equitable and just. So like I said, it wasn't just about photo ops. The SCO, together with BRICS, ASEAN, OPEC, is shaping an alternative global order. Now, the security spine, the SEO coordinates counterterrorism, intelligence, and defense. The financial arm of the SEO, BRICS, has expanded with the new development bank, trading in local currencies, which is important, which is currently challenging the dollar system. And in terms of energy, OPEC and the Gulf states are allowed to, as it stands today, to set oil prices and to maintain the balance and control oil flow around the world. Although there's a chink in the armor, there's a problem with OPEC as well, because Saudi Arabia, which is one of the major countries in OPEC, happen to be listening to America, happening to be falling to the dictates and the tenets of the United States, because Saudi Arabia, as we see today, even though it claims to be a sovereign entity, largely is in acquiescence to the dictates of the United States. And what about regional integration? ASEAN, this Association of Southeast Asian Nations, increasingly aligns with SEO and BRICS projects. Okay, so it's about finding the right balance in terms of finding the alternative to the current international architecture we have today, particularly the United Nations, is in New York. And one big one, recently, countries like France, Australia, Canada, and even the United Kingdom have been stating that they want to recognize the Palestinian state because of what is going on in Gaza and a host of other issues, while Israel is taking land and trying to prevent the creation of a Palestinian state or the existence of any Palestinian state, which will have Palestinians living side by side with Israelis. France decided with other countries that they are going to recognize it on the 9th of September 2025 during I think, the 80th UN General Assembly Summit, to happen in New York. And what does America do? America decides to deny visas to Palestinian Authority leaders, including the leader Mahmoud Abbas, and called all of them terrorists. All of this to bully, to intimidate, and to deny any oxygen to Palestine, to make sure that the idea of the Palestinian state never comes to light. And this is why America is taking this position, denying them visas and denying them any sort of access to New York, where the headquarters of the UN Secretariat is. And this is why we need an alternative system, whether it is BRICS, whether it's OPEC, in terms of energy, whether it's ASEAN as you have there, or the African Union as we have, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, strong institutions that have the money, the power, the gravitas, and the will to create an alternative to the current international system we have. Now, let's look at absence of Europe. And there's a striking part of this. Europe wasn't at the table. The Europeans are not invited. They were not invited to the table. They have never participated in it. They see it as a challenge because NATO have their own alliance in terms of the financial institutions they have, in terms of the military alliance in NATO. So the European Union, once hailed as the second global pole, was sidelined. Its carbon border adjustment mechanisms have alienated India and others. Tied to NATO for security and reliant on outside energy, Europe is looking more like a spectator than a power broker. And we have, I mean, Europe used to be like the center of gravity, the center of power around the world, and now it's been ignored. It's not been invited to any event. They are now onlookers and kept on the sideline. And even if you look at what is happening recently with Ukraine, the US really wants to do a deal with Russia, maligning and sidelining the Europeans, and the Europeans don't want the Russians to win. So this is a battle between the European Union and Russia, and the fact that Russia has the edge on the ground, beating the Ukrainians on the field with the Europeans and their allies and NATO, supporting Ukraine is why the Europeans don't want to come out of it looking weaker. Because if Russia wins substantively on the battlefield, what will happen to the NATO project? What will happen to the European project? And a host of other issues. This is what they are calculating, that it will have a domino effect. Now, if the Russians are able to beat them and beat them hard, it's going to have a domino effect. And what will happen? What will happen to the European project? So the summit leads directly into Beijing's Victory Day military parade on September 3rd. Xi Jinping and Putin and Kim Jong-un of North Korea to stand shoulder to shoulder as China showcases international ballistic missiles, drones, and long-range strike system. Now, this visual will underscore the point. Multipolarity is not just in words, it is backed by hard power. So again, it's not just about speaking it to life and saying, "Oh, we want an alternative system. We want to create, a multipolar world order, and so on and so forth." It's not just about that. It is about backing it up with hard power in order to bring it to real actualization. So there's a bottom line. The SCO Summit in Tianjin marks another milestone in the decline of the unipolar world. The new multipolar system is taking shape, and it's no longer asked, for Western permission in order to do anything. So this is what is happening, and the Russians and the Chinese, like I said, they are leading this. And the war in Ukraine is also very important in terms of shaping, in terms of rejigging the current international architecture and system. Um, Thank you, guys. Let's keep the live going. If you want to share the live stream, you have questions to ask. It's very important so that we can understand what is going on. Let's keep the conversation flowing, guys. I'm still going to look at the host of it. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization must continue to oppose hegemonism and power politics, according to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Now, the members of the SCO should continue to resist hegemonism and power politics to help a fairer international system. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping said on Monday as he opened the group leaders meeting in Tianjin. The keynote address, oh, thank you, Lily. Delivering the keynote address to world leaders and representatives of and members, partners of the SCO nation, Xi Jinping invoked what he called the Shanghai spirit of mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, consultation, respect for diverse civilization, and the pursuit of a shared development. It's very important. She praised the progress made by the SEO since its founding in 2001 and outlined new priorities. He said members must oppose the Cold War mentality bloc, confrontation, and bullying practices, terms often used by Beijing to criticize the US and Western policies. So this is very important. This is the beginning of the end for of course the Western system. And it's very important for us to understand what is going on. This is not just about America. It's also about the Europeans and the position that the Europeans have been taking in terms of their approach to countries around the world, particularly the so-called global South countries or third world countries, as they call them. The lack of respect, the lack of you know mutual respect, basically. The bullying tactics employed particularly by the United States. And this is why anytime they come to the global south, they preach democracy to us, trying to educate us about what we need to do, um, respect for human rights, and so on and so forth. But they don't preach the same democracy to other countries where they don't want democracy to be practiced. For instance, I give an example of Saudi Arabia. The West is not preaching democracy to Saudi Arabia. They're not doing that to the UAE. They're not doing that to Bahrain. They're not doing that to a host of other countries. But in other places, they're pushing for democracy. You see all these so-called experts talking about tyranny in China, human rights issues in China, human rights issues in Russia. And in America, you have a system that is discriminating against black people, against people of color. You have, a system in America that lacks social justice. It's few per capita in the world. I think American prison have the most people locked up, even more than China, I was told, and more than Russia and any other country in the world. The American prison system is an industry of its own. And this is the same country that is preaching, it's the story of the hypocrites. They're not looking at what they're doing, they want to project what they are doing on others. And it's clear for us to see exactly the same thing a country like Israel is doing. When the Europeans are preaching protocol to the likes of Russia, and we see what France is doing in Africa, it leaves you wondering, what the hell are these guys on about? They stay on the top of the pulpit and preach protocol and tell the rest of the world, oh, see, we are for democracy, we are for human rights, we are for XYZ, and we want uh, China and Russia and every other country that is not aligned with us, that is not doing exactly what we tell them to do, to stand down immediately. And because they have the biggest, the fattest loudspeaker, people tend to listen to them. Those of us from Africa that we don't understand how the media works, we believe them instantly because they tell us, oh, this is about human rights, it's about dignity, it's about equality, it's about justice, and this is the only thing. America and their friends are the ones that are trying to bring about this idea of human rights and justice and equity. And the likes of China and Russia and India and Nigeria, they are the barbaric ones that are stuck back in the dark ages. Therefore, we are the only civilized one. This is what they're saying. And if you listen to the language and the rhetoric, it's exactly like that. In fact, if you listen to them, and by the way, this is not the first time. During the period of slavery and colonialism, it was exactly the same thing they said. They said that the West is industrialized, it is developed, it is civilized. Therefore, it must go and conquer and civilize others. Look at what these guys did to each other even in Europe during the 40 years war in Europe. The destruction, the chaos, the barbarism. So, and this is what the West continues to do, to use its power to bully, to intimidate, and all of this must stop. And this is why there's a need to create an alternative system that will challenge the dominance of the West. Very important. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, like, leave a comment, share this video. Let's continue to talk about the issues relating to the global south and their relationship with the global north, particularly with the Western countries, the transatlantic partnership in Europe and America, and what they continue to do to the rest of the world. So the meeting probably come to an end by the end of came to an end by the end of the day. And on the 3rd of September, like I said, there will be a parade in Beijing, an annual parade in commemoration of the end of the Second World War, like they do in Russia, like they do in China, and they're doing. I think even America also celebrates the end of the Second World War. And so there will be a big parade, and you should expect world leaders to be in attendance, including the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un, including the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, including the Russian leader Vladimir Putin. So let's look at the history of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as I discussed earlier. Let's look at the history of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO. Now, by 1996, the Shanghai Five began. The SCO began as the Shanghai Five, a security arrangement between China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. The main goal was to resolve border disputes after the Soviet Union's collapse and to build trust along their shared frontiers. Now, by 2001, which gave birth to the SCO, on June 15th, 2001, in Shanghai, Uzbekistan joined and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was formally created. So it started initially in 1996 as the Shanghai Five, a group of 5 countries, in order to resolve the security problems and the border issues that happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 90s. So in 1996, the Shanghai Five was created, which is a security arrangement between China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And like I said, the main goal was to resolve the border disputes between the former Soviet blocs and China along their frontiers. And by 2001, after Uzbekistan joined the organization, it was formally created. Now, the founding members include China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Now, the initial focus of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is security cooperation against terrorism, separatism, and extremism, often called the three evils. I'll take that one more time. The initial goal of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization by the founding members, who include China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, is to fight against what they call the three evils, which include terrorism, separatism, and extremism. Now, let's look at the expansion project of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and what has happened since the year 2001. Now, by 2002, the SEO Charter was signed, giving it a legal foundation and expanding its agenda beyond just security. Now, in 2004 as well, the Secretariat was established in Beijing. A regional counter-terrorism center was set up in Tashkent, which is in Uzbekistan. And in 2005, India, Pakistan, Iran, and Mongolia were granted observer status. This was around 2005. And by 2017, major enlargement happened within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO. India and Pakistan became full members, bringing total members to 8. Now, in 2023, Iran was admitted as the ninth member state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And in 2025, Belarus is also expected to join, further widening the bloc. So as it stands today, second on the today being the 1st of September 2025, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have 9 members, and I'm going to mention them. China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan were the founding members, and now India, Pakistan, Iran, and Mongolia have also been admitted into the group. And and Iran was admitted into the group in 2023, making it the ninth member country of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the expectation is that Belarus as well will join the SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and they continue to expand, the organization, which is mostly a military alliance, but they said it was set up for security purposes to deal with what they call the three evils. Now, the SCO has gradually moved from a narrow security focus to a broader agenda. Security, economic cooperation is one of them. Energy and resources is another one. Political dialogue is another one, and cultural exchange. And let's adumbrate these points one after the other. The security, in terms of security, areas of counter-terrorism is what is being looked at by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Intelligence sharing and joint military exercises will be had between the SCO members. Economic cooperation is also very important. Infrastructural project, trade in local currencies, and connectivity. And we can also see that with the whole idea of the One Belt, One Road initiative, which is designed primarily to connect the countries in Central Asia, to create an alternative corridor on land as opposed to what the corridor through the sea, through Central Asia, to Western Asia, to Europe, as an alternative trade route or corridor in semblance of the old Silk Road. So the One Belt, One Road initiative was a proposal, a project that was brought in place by the current Chinese President Xi Jinping around the period of 2013 and 2014. Now, what about energy and resources? Coordination in terms of pipeline and oil and gas is also very important in terms of integrating the economic interests of these Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries. And of course, political dialogue is important. Promoting multipolarity and resisting Western-dominated alliances is also very important in terms of, the position of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, cultural exchanges is another one. Education, youth programs, cultural diplomacy, and so on and so forth. As of 2025, the membership of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, like I mentioned earlier, include China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, and the observer countries include Afghanistan, Belarus, and Mongolia. So you have three observer countries, which include Afghanistan, Mongolia, and Belarus. Well, Mongolia originally refused to join the organization for certain reasons, but now they've become a member country of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, what are the dialogue? There are also countries that are seen as the dialogue partners of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They include Turkey, Azerbaijan, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Nepal, Bahrain, Kuwait, Maldives, and Myanmar. So these are the dialogue members of the SCO. So at every level, you have cooperation. At every level, you have political integration. At every level, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is trying to find an alternative to the current political and economic architecture of the world, which is largely run by the transatlantic partnership in terms of the United States of America and the European countries. So there's a need for us to look at the trending events, and these topics are very important because the world is fast changing. It's changing at a fast pace. Different wars being fought, especially border wars, especially wars fought for the purpose of control and hegemony and interest, like we're seeing in the Middle East today. The shaping, the rejigging, and the rebalancing of the current international system is moving at a fast pace. But if you're not really paying attention to it, you will not understand. People think these wars are just fought needlessly. It's about control and power and the control of world's vital resources and trade routes. So this is why it's important for us to pay attention to what is going on around the world. Now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization represents over 40% of world's population and a large share of Eurasia's landmass. Now, seen as a counterweight to NATO and Western-led institutions, it works closely with BRICS and other global South platforms to promote a multipolar world order. In short, the SCO evolved from border security pact into one of the largest multilateral organizations in the world, which is now shaping global security, economics, and geopolitics. So if you have any question, feel free to leave it in the comment section. Feel free to leave a thumbs up on the video, leave a comment on the video if you have any question, if you have any suggestion, leave it on the video. And most importantly, share this video to your family and friends. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.